The Grand Magnolia Ballroom had never seen such splendor. Gilded chandeliers rained light across perfectly laid linen, and stringed melodies danced through the air. Tonight, the city's elite gathered to witness the merger not just of two people, but of dynasties. Nia Hayes was the bride, draped in a sleek, ivory gown, her dark hair pinned like a queen in exile. She should have felt elated, but as she sat at the head table, surrounded by applause and indulgent smiles, a flicker of unease licked at her core. Every laugh, every polite nod from her was part of a role she had rehearsed her whole life: the dutiful daughter, the silent observer. Her new husband, Darius Vance, basked in the attention. Clad in a tailored suit, he strode the room like a man born to occupy every center stage. His charm was effortless, his laugh infectious, his future guaranteed now that he had secured both a bride and an empire. But it was her father, Elijah Hayes, who commanded the night. Silver-haired and sharp-eyed, the patriarch oversaw the celebration like a king sealing a kingdom's borders. Next to him sat Simone, Nia's younger sister, vibrant, impulsive, and impossible to ignore. Simone wore a deep, burgundy dress and a knowing smile. When her gaze flickered toward Darius, it carried heat. Nia noticed. She always noticed. As the music dimmed, a master of ceremonies strode to the center, announcing the groom's toast. Darius stepped forward, clutching the microphone, his gaze sweeping theatrically across the gathering. The bride straightened in anticipation. This was her moment, wasn't it? "My dear friends and family," Darius began, his baritone voice filling the ballroom. "Today I join not only a beautiful woman in marriage, but a family I've admired for a decade. 10 years. Nia's hands tightened in her lap. "I've held a secret in my heart all this time," he continued. The room leaned in. "A love so deep I couldn't speak it. Until now." Nia's heartbeat stuttered. She rose, anticipating her name. But Darius wasn't looking at her. He walked past her, towards Simone. He extended his hand and called softly, "Simone, this dance is for you." A murmur rippled. Nia froze as Simone rose, triumphant, and moved into his arms. The music swelled again, and the room, unsure but charmed, began to applaud. They twirled, oblivious. The guests nodded approvingly, mistaking this atrocious betrayal for familial love. But Nia saw it for what it was, an execution in silken sequins. Silent, numb, she watched until her heart cracked into shards. Then she rose. What Nia did next would silence the music, shatter the lie, and send her sister to the emergency room. The applause still echoed, a surreal soundtrack to Nia's unraveling world. Darius held Simone close, her burgundy dress swirling as if in celebration of victory. Faces turned toward them in admiration, his love declaration interpreted as poetic, touching. The orchestra played on, blind to the betrayal it serenaded. And her father, Elijah Hayes, was smiling. That was the worst part. Nia stared at him from across the table. He watched the scene like a general observing an efficient ambush. His daughter, his pawn, had served her purpose. Now she sat discarded, an ornament who had fulfilled her role, the silent, sacrificial bride. But there was something Elijah had underestimated. Nia wasn't broken. Not yet. She took the champagne flute in her hand, then put it down with deliberate care. Slowly, she stood. Something inside her had crystallized, no longer fragile, no longer compliant. Her steps were steady, measured, cutting through the muttering crowd. Every eye followed her now, still expectant of grace and polite smiles. But they got something else.
Naya walked straight toward her father. The music dimmed. As if the air itself recoiled. She halted in front of Elijah, who sat with his arms crossed, unconcerned. His expression hardened slightly. The king was being challenged in his courtroom. Her voice rang out, carrying through the hall, slicing the muttering in half. "Father, since Darius has just confessed his love for Simone," she said loud enough that the chandeliers might have heard, "does this mean you're now forgiving the $750,000 debt you forced me to marry him to cover?" Time froze. The bow of the violinist stilled mid-stroke. The audience gaped. A fork slipped from someone's hand, clattering against porcelain. Darius, still holding Simone, choked on his breath. Simone's face drained of color. As she stumbled away from him, her hand raised to her trembling mouth. Every mask in the room fractured. Elijah Hayes stood abruptly, muttered curses under his breath. Naya watched him in silence, her own pulse suddenly calm. She remembered his ultimatum just weeks ago. "You will marry Darius to secure the family. That debt will destroy us otherwise." Naya had obeyed. She always obeyed. Until now. Now she had detonated the truth beneath his empire in front of 300 witnesses. Chaos bubbled into existence. Simone collapsed, whether from shock or guilt no one could tell. People shouted for help. A medic was summoned. Elijah rushed to her side, his face twisted with something between anger and terror. Naya stepped back. Her purpose was complete. She was no longer part of this family, not an ally nor a tool. She was an exile, with a voice, a weapon. And weapons are hardest to control once set free. As Simone was rushed to the hospital and Elijah turned his wrath toward Naya, it became clear the wedding was only the beginning. The real battle for truth had just begun.
The ballroom had emptied in chaos, but Nia stood in the quiet wreckage like a haunting afterimage. Her pristine wedding dress hung around her like ashes. It was no longer a symbol of union, but an artifact of betrayal. While guests fled, whispering and shaking their heads, she stayed still, watching everything unravel. Her father, Elijah Hayes, had moments ago been the undisputed king of that hall. Now he was scrambling, issuing orders, barking at medical technicians as they loaded Simone, his golden child, onto a stretcher. Darius hovered beside them, clearly forgotten, no longer a prince, just a pawn gone rogue. She caught Elijah's eye just once, a look of pure venom. There was no grief there for Simone's collapse, no remorse, only rage. It was the look of a man whose empire had been publicly cracked, and he blamed his eldest daughter. "You didn't expose him," he had hissed earlier, voice a burning hiss meant only for her. "You destroyed this family." But even as he fled the room, chasing the ambulance with the urgency of a man protecting property, not a daughter, Nia felt something else. Not guilt, not fear, not even satisfaction, just emptiness. A volcanic quiet after the eruption. The whispers continued to swirl. "Did you see? She turned on her own family. No wonder he picked the other one." It didn't matter. The damage was done. She turned and quietly walked out of the Grand Magnolia, past the silent servers and overturned champagne flutes. Her gown dragged shadows behind her, but she felt lighter with each step. She didn't need a family that used her. She didn't need a home built on lies. But where would she go? After every wedding, a private family dinner was held. Nia made her way to that room out of habit, a room filled with desserts and staged celebration. But when she reached the double doors, Marcus, the longtime security guard, stepped forward, blocking her path. "Miss Hayes," he said, not meeting her eyes, "you're not allowed inside."
Something in her chest cracked again. Not loudly, but decisively. "I am family," she said quietly. "The order came from Mr. Hayes." The words cut deeper than any blade. Her own father had banished her. No explanations, no chance to defend herself. She was no longer a daughter in his eyes. Just a risk. She turned away. The courtroom attendant handed her a light wrap. Nia walked out into the night air, its chill brushing her despair. As she hailed a cab, her new apartment, the one her father had gifted her as part of the wedding, waited. But when she inserted her key into the lock, it wouldn't turn. She tried again, and again. Click. Someone had already changed the lock. In the time it took for her to travel across the city, they had erased her completely. Her phone buzzed. Father blinked on the screen. She hesitated, then answered. "Don't call this number again," Elijah said coldly. "You're fired. Your accounts are frozen. The condo's been reassigned. Consider this a clean break. Goodbye, Nia." The line went dead. She stood in the hallway of what was supposed to be her new life. Her old life had been stripped away in less than 2 hours. No job, no home, no money. Just a soiled wedding dress and the bitter taste of truth sticking to her tongue. Now fully cast out and alone, Nia had to choose: collapse into despair or rise, fueled by the secrets her family hid. She chose to fight.
The hallway was quiet, too quiet considering what had just happened. The walls felt like they were closing in. Nia took a slow breath as she crumpled to the floor, the echo of her father's voice still in her ear. "Don't call this number again." The words felt like a verdict, and the cold marble beneath her offered no comfort. Her wedding dress, once bright and hopeful, now lay in a puddle around her feet, stained, creased, and alien. It wasn't hers anymore. None of it was. The life she had been living had been built on obligations and lies. Now the facade was shattered. Only sharp edges remained. There had to be someone to call, someone who hadn't been bought by Elijah or silenced by his power. She scrolled through her contacts. Her father's business partner, Mr. Sterling, he had always called her sweetheart, treated her like family. She dialed. 1 ring, 2. "Sterling here?" he answered cautiously. "Mr. Sterling," Nia said, her voice trembling but steady. "It's Nia. I heard what happened." His tone stiffened. "Look, I can't get involved. I'm handling delicate matters for your father. It's best if you let this go." "But—" He hung up. Her pulse hammered louder. She tried another number. Mrs. Dubois, her late mother's closest friend, a kind widow who always called Nia child. "Mrs. Dubois," she said when the woman picked up, I need a place to stay tonight. I've been—" "Oh, Nia," the woman whispered, her voice full of pity. A click. Call ended. She stared at the phone, then at her reflection in the elevator's mirrored panel when she finally descended. She looked like someone else, a ghost in a bride's corpse. She walked out into the biting night, rain beginning to fall, a cold drizzle that felt like the city itself was spitting her out. She walked, left foot, right, across the squares, past the parks, down the avenue where she once ate ice cream as a child, Hazel Street, Riverbend Boulevard. The drizzle morphed into a steady rain, and her gown absorbed it all, growing heavier with every step. Her shoes split, but she didn't stop. She had no money, no home, no safety net. But she had an image, something that came back to her like a whisper. An old house, vines on brick, a gate she'd been told never to cross. Aunt Vivian's house. Vivian Hayes, her father's estranged sister, the one he called Poison,
the one he outlawed from the family after an argument lost to time. Naya didn't ask why back then, but now she needed the truth. When she reached the old house, her breath came in sharp gasps. The porch light flicked on, casting a gold glow on the overgrown garden. The door swung open before she knocked. Vivian stood in the doorway, tall, stern, and silent. Her gaze flicked over the wet dress, the ruined makeup, the exhaustion, and without ceremony, she stepped aside. "He threw you out, didn't he?" "It was waiting for one of Elijah's children to finally see," she said, her voice steady and unapologetic. "Come in, you'll catch a cold." Naya stepped into warmth. A woven rug, the scent of dried herbs, walls lined with books. She took a seat at the worn wooden table as Vivian handed her a towel and tea. She felt safe. For the first time in years, she felt safe. Vivian sat opposite her, piercing gaze unwavering. "He threw you out, didn't he?" Naya nodded. "Good," Vivian said. "Now you're free." What Vivian told her next would reveal the first crack in Elijah's empire, a secret not about Darius or Simone, but the truth behind a debt that wasn't what it seemed. The tea was hot, steadying. Nia cupped the chipped mug between her palms, watching the steam curl like secrets rising. Vivian sat opposite her, posture straight, hands folded neatly. Her eyes studied Nia, not with pity, but with an almost clinical understanding. "He threw you out," Vivian repeated, as if confirming her own expectations. "And in doing so, he freed you." Nia swallowed hard. "He said I ruined the family, just for telling the truth." Vivian scoffed. Truth is exactly what Elijah fears. She leaned back in her chair, voice low but deliberate. "So, tell me, what did he say about the debt?" Nia recounted the ultimatum her father had given her 2 months ago. Darius had a $750,000 debt hanging over his head. It was life-ruining, business-ending, a match made in desperation, not love. She was the price of the payoff. Vivian listened in silence, her face unreadable. When Nia finished, her aunt let out a bitter laugh. "That disgusting old liar." "What do you mean?" Vivian leaned forward. "That debt was real, but it wasn't Darius's. It was Simone's." The words took a moment to land. Nia felt the world tilt under her again. "Simone?" she echoed, stunned. "Oh yes," Vivian confirmed. "Your sister has been living a double life. Miami, Las Vegas, jetting off to designer boutiques and exclusive clubs, and the loans came due. The vultures came knocking." Nia's breath caught. "But father said—" "Of course he did," Vivian cut in, lips tight. "He'd rather sell you than tarnish his precious doll's image. Darius offered a way out. He was broke, ambitious, already entangled." She paused, eyes shining with something cold. "So, Elijah spun a deal." Vivian spoke with quiet intensity. "He forced Darius to settle Simone's debt. In exchange, Darius got you, and by extension, the family company. You were the peace offering, the collateral, because you, unlike Simone, do what you're told." Nia stared into her cup, hands trembling. Rage flared, but beneath it, something deeper. Grief. Grief for the girl who did everything right, who followed every rule, and was still disposable. This wasn't about business. This was about control, about protecting the fragile illusions he built. A clock ticked in the quiet house. It was the only sound. Nia felt herself anchored by it, collecting all the fragments that had shattered in the last 24 hours. "What do I do now?" she whispered, the ache in her voice far from defeated, just human. Vivian stood abruptly, walked to a dresser, and returned with a small object on a string. A tarnished key, old and heavy. "Start here," she said, placing it in Nia's hand. "This belonged to your mother." She didn't trust Elijah. She didn't trust anyone. So she prepared. Nia stared at the key, the cold metal pressing into her skin. It felt like truth, like power, like freedom. Vivian's voice softened. She called it her sanctuary. You'll understand when you get there. The key wasn't just to an apartment. It was a doorway into the past, and inside, Nia would find the first proof that her mother had known more than she ever imagined.
The next morning dawned gray, but Nia felt something close to clarity for the first time in days. Vivian handed her a change of clothes, dark slacks and a simple sweater. The wedding dress, now stained and ruined, was folded and left in a corner. Like the memories it held, she didn't need it anymore. Vivian pressed a few bills into her hand. For the bus and food, she said, not offering sympathy, only dignity. You have a long day ahead. The address was scribbled on a scrap of paper. Nia boarded an old city bus. She sat by the window, the seat threadbare beneath her. As the bus rattled through the city, she watched familiar locations slip by like ghosts. Her favorite cafe, the bakery where her mother bought her birthday cakes, the gleaming facade of Hayes Family Foods. All of it belonged to her father. All of it was born from lies she was only just starting to understand. The bus dropped her near the river bend, a tired neighborhood of cracked sidewalks and peeling paint. She found the building, a narrow brick walk-up with a rusty fire escape and ivy creeping across its walls. It looked forgotten, but not abandoned. She climbed the creaky stairs to the third floor and found Unit 24. The key slid into the lock, and with a rusty click, the door opened. She stepped inside, and a decade of silence greeted her. It was small, just a studio with yellowed wallpaper and simple furniture, but it was clean, deliberate, untouched by time or alteration. Her mother's presence lingered. A small bookshelf held well-worn titles. A writing desk faced the window. On the desk, a calendar sat frozen on a date from 10 years ago, the day her mother had died. Nia crossed the room slowly, her fingers brushing the dusty surfaces. She could imagine her mother sitting here, writing, thinking, planning, hiding. But hiding what? She checked the desk drawers. The top ones held nothing but stationery. The bottom drawer, however, was locked. She tried the key from the apartment door. It didn't fit. A pang of frustration hit her. Then her gaze drifted back to the calendar. She reached up and gently peeled it from the wall, and there it was, a small key taped to the plaster with yellowed tape. Her mother had hidden it, waiting for someone to look deeper. Her hands shaking, Nia untaped the key and tried it on the locked drawer. It clicked. Inside was a single item, a thick green ledger. The cover was worn, the pages filled with her mother's fine, deliberate handwriting. She opened it to the first page. Inconsistency log, production bay 2. Nia's brows knitted. Page after page listed product entries with notes on batches deemed defective, spoiled, or compromised. But in a parallel column, the actual fate revealed something far more calculated. Product marked as destroyed was instead marked sold via unofficial channel, or worse, donated for PR. Beef stew, canned milk, batches logged as unsafe were being passed off as charity, feeding orphans and seniors food that should have been destroyed. Her father hadn't just stolen from his own company, he'd poisoned innocents for tax breaks and praise. Her stomach twisted. That wasn't just fraud, that was cruelty. She closed the ledger and held it close. This was no longer about a ruined wedding or personal betrayal. This was a crime. The sanctuary wasn't just a refuge, it was evidence. And her mother had left it for her, not to mourn, but to fight. But how do you use the truth when everyone with power is part of the lie? Nia needed an ally, one who had already tried to expose Elijah once before and paid the price.
The ledger weighed heavily in Nia's bag as she left the sanctuary apartment.
almost as though it carried not just ink and pages, but the full weight of her mother's truth. She walked back to the bus stop, the cold November air sharp on her skin, her mind sharper still. Her mother wasn't just meticulous, she was strategic. Every entry in the ledger was deliberate. Every date, every note, a breadcrumb trail leading not just to Elijah's fraud, but something darker, something methodical. But this wasn't a battle she could wage alone. She needed someone who understood the power and danger of truth, someone who had once tried to expose her father and suffered for it. There had been a name Vivian mentioned the night before, Andre Thorne, a journalist, tenacious, fearless, destroyed. 5 years ago, he had dug into Elijah Hayes and the company's donation programs. He got too close to the truth. And Elijah? He hadn't threatened Andre. He'd crushed him. Fabricated audio recordings, fake testimonies, accusations of bribery. Andre had lost everything. His job, his reputation, his friends. But someone who had lost everything might understand her. She found his current address online, a basement office in a half-abandoned building. The sign above the door was faded, Creative Plus, copywriting, and slogans. The E in creative was missing. Naya descended the cracked steps into a dimly lit room filled with overflowing file cabinets and paper-strewn tables. It smelled of stale coffee and defeat. A man sat at a battered desk, typing aimlessly, surrounded by fogs of cigarette smoke. He looked up, dark circles under piercing eyes, a 3-day beard, and a look that said he didn't care anymore. "What do you want?" he muttered. "Holiday sales slogans, or are you the new intern?" "I'm Naya Hayes." He stilled. She stepped forward and placed the ledger gently on his desk. He blinked. Then he barked a laugh that wasn't humor. "You're joking. Elijah's daughter here, with a ledger." He pushed it back toward her. "I'm done playing martyr." "This isn't about you," Naya said, her voice firm. "It's about my mother, and about all the people he's poisoned for profit." Andre's gaze narrowed. He flipped open the cover. His eyes scanned the neat handwriting. Then he stopped. He began flipping faster, hands trembling. "This," he whispered. "It wasn't mistakes. He falsified reports, sold bad product, lied about donations. For years." Andre's face drained of emotion, but his eyes lit with something else, something buried, something hungry. "Proof," he said slowly. "Real proof." Naya nodded. "But it's not enough to fight him in the city. They'll bury this. We need pressure, exposure, public shame." Andre closed the ledger and leaned back in his chair. The man she had found in a basement was gone. In his place was the journalist he used to be. "The last time," he said, staring at the ledger, "I took everything. My job, my name, my life." He paused. "And this time, I want revenge." He reached for his phone. "Let's prove he's a monster." But the moment they dug deeper, Naya would find that the fraud was just the surface, and the real crime was far more personal, one hidden in her mother's final days. Andre's basement office became their war room. The ledger lay open between them, surrounded by stacks of old newspapers and files Andre had kept from his past investigations, artifacts from the last time he tried to expose Hayes Family Foods. Their strategy was simple in theory: find the pattern, expose the lie, and let the truth infect the city like a plague. But first, they needed a smoking gun. Andre dug into his archives, his fingers stained with old ink and stale desperation. He drew parallels between the ledger and the articles he'd written 5 years ago, articles that never saw daylight. "This," he said, pointing at a date in the ledger, "matches a donation drive I covered back in 2014. Elijah sent condensed milk to the public school system as a goodwill gesture. That same batch was marked as spoiled here." Naya leaned over the ledger, comparing the entry to the article. He disguised waste disposal as charity. And she did the tax system double, Andre added. He gets rid of bad product for free and takes a tax write-off for generosity. What kind of person does that? Naya murmured. It wasn't a question. It was mourning. A person with no conscience. And he's not the only one. He stood and walked to a heavy cabinet tucked in the corner. He unlocked it with a key worn from use and pulled out several large binders stacked with news clippings. He flipped through them, scattering pages across his desk. Here, he said, shoving one toward Naya. Every last Friday of the month, for nearly 5 years, your father made these charity donations. There's a system, Naya said, tracing her fingers over the dates. Everything in the ledger follows the same pattern. And patterns can be traced, Andre said. His eyes gleamed. We'll bring this to a paper outside the city, one Elijah can't buy out, one that will run it nationally. Naya nodded. It was a start, but something nagged at her mind. Her mother, the ledger, the pristine apartment she'd kept as her private refuge. Why had she hidden this? What else was she protecting? What about my mother? Naya asked suddenly. She must have known something was wrong. Andre paused. She logged it. She recorded this. She tried to warn someone. And she died, Naya said quietly. Suddenly, unexpectedly. Andre's expression darkened. He saw where she was going. Do you think... I don't know, Naya answered honestly. But I need to. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She smoothed it out on his desk. It was a pharmacy receipt she'd found tucked inside her mother's coat in the sanctuary apartment. The date was 2 days before her mother's death. The medication listed was her heart drug. The note on the bottom, written hastily in her mother's hand, was the real clue. Simone offered to pick up my new prescription and buy the medicine herself, Naya read. Said I shouldn't bother. I don't know why, but I'm afraid. Andre stared at the paper, then at Naya. You think your sister helped kill her, Naya finished, or at least let her die. Suddenly, fraud felt small. This was murder. Its proof might lie in old records, hidden letters, stolen things. Naya's stomach churned, anger and grief mixing like poison. Andre closed the pharmacy slip with a trembling hand. This isn't just a takedown. This is justice. He stood, resolute. I have a contact, someone who's wanted to expose your father for years. If we play this right, we can force their confession. How? Naya asked. By giving them something to lose. Their reputation. He held up the ledger. Let's make them afraid. Soon, the family that once controlled her fate would walk into their own trap, and Naya would be waiting with the truth they couldn't outrun.
Night settled over the city, but Andre's basement office buzzed with energy. The air was thick with dust and purpose. Nia sat beside Andre at his cluttered desk, both of them surrounded by opened folders, news articles, old photographs, and the damning ledger her mother had left behind. They had enough evidence to take the first step, but not enough to topple the empire. For that, Andre said, they needed a direct supply chain witness, someone still inside the company, someone whose fear outweighed their loyalty. Andre scribbled a name on a pad. Leon Strickland. Nia frowned. He's the plant manager, father's trusted man for 20 years. And he's a liar, Andre said. When I questioned him years ago, he swore everything at the production plant was above board, but he knew about the mislabeled stock. He probably even signed off on it. Nia's pulse quickened. Why would he talk now? Because he's about to be cornered, Andre said, holding up a printout. Turns out Leon's been making quiet visits to a private clinic,
and he's been doing it under a fake name. Nia's brows shot up. Blackmail? Andre shook his head. No. Leverage. He's guilty and scared. We won't threaten him, but we'll show him what we know, and we'll offer him something better. Freedom, she said, and immunity. And a chance to step out of Elijah's shadow, Andre added. They arranged a meeting through an untraceable message sent via a burner phone Andre had kept for years. No names, no threats, just an offer. Leon responded, reluctantly. He agreed to meet. The location wasn't glamorous, the back dining room of an old diner at the edge of town. The place smelled like stale fries and burnt coffee, but it was neutral, anonymous. When Leon Strickland arrived, he looked older than his file photo suggested. He wore a creased suit that poorly concealed his nervous posture. He sat across from Nia, his eyes wide when he realized exactly who she was. Miss Hayes, I didn't know. You don't have to pretend, she said softly. You've seen what he does. You executed it. Leon swallowed hard. His eyes darted between her and Andre. I can't. Andre calmly opened the ledger to a page and slid it toward him. This is your signature. Leon paled. You knew the products were defective. You knew they weren't destroyed. And you signed the forms anyway. Leon began to shake his head. Elijah forced me. I had no choice. He threatened my job, my pension, my kids. And now everyone knows, Nia interrupted, her voice low. But you have a choice again. She leaned closer. We bring this to the press, national press. If you testify, we can offer immunity. You'll walk free. If not, she gestured to the ledger. Everything falls on you. Leon stared at the ledger. His jaw clenched, his breathing quickened. For a moment, it seemed like he might bolt. Then he exhaled. I'll talk, he whispered, but you have to protect me. We will, Andre said. But first, there's something else you need to tell her. Leon looked at Nia, his expression guilt-ridden. Your mother confronted Elijah out this. She threatened to expose it. Nia felt her inhale catch. Leon continued, voice trembling. She was planning to go to a reporter, but then she got sick. Suddenly. Too suddenly. Nia's heart shattered at the unspoken accusation. Simone, her own sister, had been the last person to handle her mother's medication. Did Elijah know? She whispered. Leon lowered his glaze. He ordered the cover-up. He didn't stop what Simone started. Nia sat back trembling. The truth was no longer a theory. It was history. Thank you, she said quietly. Leon nodded. He rose to leave, and before stepping through the door, he turned back. You're doing the right thing. She'd be proud. Nia let the words settle, like a blessing. Andre leaned back in his chair and cracked a grim smile. Now we've got our witness. The trap was set. But the moment Nia and Andre made their move, Elijah would discover their alliance, and he still had one weapon powerful enough to break her spirit. Simone.
Rain streaked down the diner window, distorted by the flickering neon sign, while Nia and Andre remained seated long after Leon left. The hum of old fixtures and the clatter of plates from the kitchen provided a strange comfort, like the world was still turning, even with the truth now stretching open like a fresh wound. They had their witness, they had their records, they had their proof. It was time to move. Andre slid his phone across the table and tapped the screen. I'm sending this to an editor at The Atlantic, someone I trust. Once he verifies the documents, he'll move it up the chain. Within days, this won't just be a scandal, it'll be a storm. Nia nodded, her eyes fixed on the ledger, now closed and bound in twine. Her mother's handwriting still burned through her thoughts. "He's going to know," she said. "He's going to come for us." "He'll try," Andre replied, "but we'll be ready." Just as he said it, his phone buzzed. One in-state call. Blocked ID. Andre's eyes narrowed. He pressed answer and put it on speaker. "Mr. Thorne," came a familiar voice, cold, controlled, regal. "You've made a mistake." Elijah Hayes. Andre's shoulders tensed. "You don't scare me anymore, Elijah." "You should be scared," Elijah murmured. "You've involved my daughter in something beyond her understanding." Naya instinctively leaned forward, her pulse racing. "Your daughter involved herself when she threw away my life to protect a lie you engineered." Silence. Then a low sigh. "Naya, you've always been the reasonable one. I hoped you'd stay that way, but you forced my hand." "Is that why you threatened Leon?" Andre cut in. Elijah paused. "Leon made his choices, as did you." There was a faint beep, like a call waiting. Then a soft, quivering voice joined the line. "Naya?" It was Simone. Simone's voice was strained, the sound of someone exhausted or afraid. "Elijah," Andre growled, "don't do this." "Oh, I'm not doing anything," Elijah responded coolly. "Simone wanted to speak with her sister. Go ahead, dear." "Naya," Simone said softly, almost a whisper. "Listen to me. I didn't mean for her to die. I swear I didn't." Naya felt the weight of the diner pressing in, the rain, the ledger, the truth, her grief. All of it collided in her chest, stealing her breath. "You switched her medication," Naya said, voice shaking, barely contained. "You let her think she was taking her heart medicine, and it killed her." It was an accident," Simone replied, her voice breaking. "He told me it was something else, a stronger dose, just until she stabilized. I didn't know." "You didn't ask," Naya said, the words cutting like frost. "You didn't care. That's worse." A breathless sob echoed through the line. Then silence. "Elijah," Andre said, voice clipped. "You can't expose me," Elijah replied calmly, "not without destroying that little sister you're trying to save." Naya closed her eyes. There it was, the truth, the choice. Save Simone and protect the system that killed her mother, or burn the whole thing down. Her jaw tightened. Simone made her choice. Now I make mine. Elijah exhaled slowly. "You've become a disappointment." "And you've become a monster," Naya replied. She ended the call. Andre watched her, expression solemn. "You don't have to do this alone." "I know," Naya said quietly, "but I have no intention of stopping now." Andre nodded and finished typing the email to his editor. Seconds later, it was sent. Attached were digital copies of the ledger, Leon's signed statement, and transcriptions of the audio from Elijah's call. The storm was officially unleashed, but Naya had underestimated her father's desperation, and he had one final weapon, a secret from her past she never saw coming. 2 days passed in a blur of tension and sleeplessness. Nia and Andre worked tirelessly, fielding coded emails and encrypted texts from journalists, lawyers, and legal aides. The Atlantic's investigative team had begun verifying the documents and had already uncovered more: financial trails, questionable land acquisitions, falsified lab reports. Progress. Meanwhile, social media was ablaze with whispers. Blogs speculated about the H scandal, and murmurs of corruption began circulating in circles far beyond Hazel City. Elijah Hayes' carefully curated image of a philanthropic titan was fracturing. But he wasn't falling. Not yet. Nia stood at the window of the sanctuary apartment. It had become her war bunker. Her mother's old curtains swayed gently in the breeze, and memory sat with her like a quiet guest. "You look like her," Vivian had said days ago. "Not in your face, in your fight." Nia had silently agreed. But she wasn't prepared for what came next. Andre's name lit her phone screen at 6:32 a.m. She answered immediately. "They killed the article," he said flatly. "The Atlantic pulled out. No explanation." Nia felt her breath catch. "Elijah got to them." "He must have, and I don't know how, but they wiped their internal drafts too." Elijah's cornered. He's also not done. Later that afternoon, a thicker envelope arrived at the sanctuary's door. No return address. The paper was heavy. Official. Inside were a series of documents: birth certificates, receipts, and a small photograph. A photograph of a much younger Nia holding a mixed-race baby. She stared at it, confusion and disbelief mixing into a knot in her throat. Andre leaned over her shoulder. "What is this?" he murmured. Nia turned to the documents. An adoption file, filed 14 years ago. Her name on the form, and next to it, father, unknown. Her pulse hammered. "This isn't real." Andre flipped the page. "Elijah sent this. He's trying to destabilize you." "But why gaslight me with this?" Nia whispered. And then it clicked. Because it wasn't a lie. She remembered the time she'd skipped school, drunked one night, blacked out, woken confused. Her 15th birthday had come soon after. The argument, the shame, the endless grounding, and then her mother's sudden secretiveness. A baby. A child. Her child. She stared at the name on the file. Infant Hayes. Placed in state care. No contact authorized. Tears burned her eyes. "I was a child," she said, voice sinking. "He punished me, silenced me, and then he erased it." Andre shook his head. "He's banking on you breaking down, on this killing your resolve." But Nia wasn't the same girl who'd been afraid back then. She wiped her eyes and closed the folder. "This doesn't destroy me. It reminds me why he has to fall." "We can leak this. He used your private trauma as blackmail. People will care." Nia shook her head. "Not yet. This isn't a weapon. It's a wound." There was a growling hum beneath her voice, a determination that had a heartbeat. "Elijah uses people's secrets, but he's forgotten what happens when one of them learns to use the truth." Andre nodded slowly. "Then let's find the child." Nia's grief simmered. Her pulse hardened. "Yes, and let's show the world that no one, not even a Hayes, is untouchable." But as she dug deeper for her lost child, Nia would discover Elijah wasn't the only one with secrets, and the true betrayal was still to come. The air in the sanctuary apartment felt suddenly thinner, as if it wasn't just hosting one woman anymore, but her past, her pain, and a future she still didn't understand. The revelation of the adoption file had knocked the wind out of Nia, but as the shock settled, something unexpected rose in its place. Purpose. "My child," she whispered, the words foreign yet powerful. She needed answers, closure, for her mother, for herself, for a baby she'd never held, and perhaps a chance to shield that child from the legacy Elijah had built. Andre finished scanning the adoption documents. We'll need someone who deals with records like this, a caseworker, someone who can pull the sealed files, and someone who won't run to my father, Naya added. There was one person who fit. Naya made a call, not to a journalist or lawyer. This time she dialed a number she never thought she'd need. Mrs. Dubois, she said when the line picked up, her voice steady. I need your help. There was a pause, then a breath. You're your mother's child after all, Mrs. Dubois said quietly. Come to my office. Hours later, Naya sat in a quiet meeting room at the Child Services Building, neutral beige walls, a desk with a stack of forms, and a woman with tired eyes but a familiar heart sitting opposite her. Your mother trusted me, and I failed her too. I didn't know how deep his control went. Naya remained steady. She had no time for bitterness. She needed the truth. Can you find my daughter? Mrs. Dubois nodded slowly. The process takes time, but the file number matches our system. It wasn't erased, just sealed. And where is she now? She's in a foster program outside the city, under a changed surname. Naya felt her heart drum against her ribs. Is she safe? She's alive, Mrs. Dubois said, looking up. But she's not the same girl you signed away. She's bounced between families. No one told her about you. The words were heavy, every syllable a dagger. But Naya didn't flinch. I want to meet her. Not a demand, an oath. You will, Mrs. Dubois said, but first you have to be prepared. She's grown up with no roots. She may not want to know you. Naya nodded, feeling that maternal fear for the first time. I'll take that risk. As they spoke, Andre waited in the hallway, phone buzzing endlessly with news updates. Another tip from a journalist, a leaked company memo, a rumor of an FBI inquiry. The news cycle was circling Elijah like vultures over a wounded king. After the meeting, the two walked silently along the sidewalk, shadows stretching across the pavement. Naya stopped outside an old church, its windows glowing faintly. I thought I knew what I was fighting for, but now I realize it's so much bigger. Andre nodded. For your mother, for your daughter, for everyone who never got a say. And for me, Naya added quietly, it's time I become someone I can trust. The just as hope made room in her heart, they saw a black sedan parked across the street. Unmarked, windows tinted. Andre's phone buzzed again. He checked it and paled. Get in the car, he said, his voice urgent. What's wrong? He waved the screen in his face. It was a news alert. Breaking. Local plant manager Leon Strickland found dead. Authorities call it suicide. Naya's breath left her in a sharp gasp. Leon! Our witness! Our key! Our friend! Elisha got to him, she whispered, horror doning. Andre gritted his teeth. This is war now. Naya stared at the black car, silently watching them, her resolve hardening. If Elijah wanted to scare her, he'd made a grave miscalculation. A life had been lost, and the next move would be hers. But even as Naya prepared to strike, someone she trusted was ready to betray her from the inside. The news of Leon Strickland's death clung to the air like smoke. Nia sat in the back seat of the car, fingers curled into white-knuckled fists, staring out at the sodium haze of streetlights streaking past. Her jaw was clenched so tight it physically hurt. Andre sat beside her, silent for once. His expression was taut, wary. There was no doubt now. Elijah's reach was deeper than either of them had anticipated.
Forcing Leon's silence was one thing. Killing him, that was a declaration. "We thought we got him cornered," she whispered at last. "But he's still a hunter." Andre turned to her. "He's getting desperate. That's when powerful men become sloppy and dangerous." "It's my fault," Nia said, not with self-pity, but with clarity. "Leon trusted me. I dragged him into this, and I couldn't protect him." Andre's reply was firm, sharp. "Blame Elijah, not you. Leon knew the risk, but he wanted the truth out, and there's a price to that." "He was someone's father," Nia added, voice trembling. "Someone's friend. And now we honor his death by finishing what he started." They rode in silence after that, the car taking them not to the sanctuary, but to an arrangement Vivian had secured, a safe house, anonymous and under her name. Andre had insisted they relocate immediately. It was no longer just about strategic caution, it was survival. Inside the house, they spread the remaining evidence across the dining table. Copies of the ledger, recordings, documents, the transcript of Simone's call. But there was one thing they hadn't accounted for. The person helping Elijah wasn't just on the outside. It was coming from within. They discovered it the moment Nia's phone buzzed, a notification from the encrypted chat app they had reserved for a very specific use. Communication between Nia, Andre, and only one other person. It was Vivian. "He knows where you are. He's already sent someone." Andre cursed and scanned the room. "I thought this place was clean." "She's telling the truth," Nia said. "We need to move again." Andre began collecting documents into a bag, but Nia paused, her eyes narrowed. "Wait," she said, reading the message again. "Why didn't she call? Why send a message? And why now?" "Because she's scared too," Andre replied quick, not stopping. "Except," she said slowly, her mind racing, "I've never given Vivian this number." Andre froze. A chill crept up the back of Nia's neck. "She's not protecting us," she whispered. "She's tracking us." Andre took the phone, eyes darting. That message came from a burner, not her number. And then he said the words that made Nia's skin crawl. "Elijah got to her." "No," Nia said immediately, but the doubt pressed on her. "Vivian, who saved me. Vivian, who gave me the key. Vivian, whose bitterness toward Elijah might have become something else, a poison of her own." But then something clicked into place, a memory. Vivian knew about Simone's involvement in their mother's death. But how? And why hadn't she told Nia sooner? "Simone," Nia breathed. "She's been talking to Vivian. She must have been trying to get her forgiveness or convince her Elijah was redeemable." And Vivian, trapped between truth and blood, hesitated. Andre looked grim. "We can't trust anyone now." Nia's reflection stared back at her from the patio door, rain-smeared and exhausted, but her eyes were still alive. "We'll finish it ourselves," she said. "The truth doesn't need permission." Andre nodded, spreading out a map of the city, marking the places where Elijah had his strongest influence. "We need one more piece." "What?" "The source of the money, the hidden accounts, the real engine behind his power." Nia nodded. It was the only way to make sure Elijah couldn't rebuild. Just then her phone buzzed again. Another encrypted message, this time from an unknown contact. It contained only 3 words. "He's on his way." With nowhere left to hide and betrayal closing in, Nia had to face the monster who made her before he destroyed everything she had left. Time felt elastic, stretching thin, then snapping back. Andre slammed the laptop shut, grabbing the evidence files. Nia stuffed the adoption records and the ledger into a backpack, the words, "He's on his way," echoing like a countdown in her head. Their only choice now was to face him. Andre grabbed the keys. "We can't outrun him forever, Nia." "No," she said, eyes steeled, "and I don't intend to." They drove to the only place Elijah would never expect, and the last place Nia ever thought she'd return, the gates of the Hayes Manor. The estate was silent under the weight of a looming storm, its grand columns and manicured grounds now haunting instead of majestic. It was a monument to cruelty disguised as legacy, a shrine to a lie. Nia stood at the steps, shoulders squared, feet planted. The front door opened. Elijah Hayes stood in the doorway, immaculate in his tailored suit, a portrait of power even now. The air crackled with charged history, the kind only blood can carry. "You never could leave well enough alone," he said calmly. Nia stared back at him. "You should have expected me to fight this time." His expression barely shifted. "You were always the quiet one, always the compliant one. You were supposed to hold this family together." "You mean cover your sins?" He stepped forward. "Everything I've done has been to protect this family. Like having Mom's voice silenced, like coercing me into marriage, like letting Leon die." She took a step toward him, her voice unyielding now. "This isn't protection, it's domination." Elijah's jaw tightened. "Do you think what you've done is noble? You've turned the world against your sister, your family, even the company that fed this city. And poisoned it, too." She took the ledger out of her bag and tossed it at his feet. It landed with a dusty thud. His gaze tracked it, then rose again as if it were a mere inconvenience. "This is meaningless," he said low. "A mother's paranoid scribblings, a dead man's accusations. The public forgets as quickly as they react." Nia shook her head. "You're right. They forget when stories fade. So I made sure ours won't." And she pulled out her phone. The screen displayed a live video stream, thousands of viewers. It was titled, "Exposing Elijah Hayes, Live." Elijah's eyes narrowed. "What have you done?" "Everything we needed," she said. "The documents, the ledger, the call with Simone, they're all public now, and they're watching you respond." Elijah went rigid. She stepped closer. "You can't silence this. You can't bury it. The truth is part of the record now." For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Not fear, not guilt, but realization. "You're just like her," he said quietly, "a saboteur. I always loved her for that. Hated her for it, too. And now I honor her for it." He looked at her. Really looked at her, but before he could speak, Simone stepped into the doorway from behind him. Pale, fragile, her eyes swollen. "Nia," she whispered, "you don't understand." "No," she cut in. "You don't get to apologize. You helped him. You let him do this." Simone flinched. "He told me it would protect us." "It killed her," Nia said, her voice cracking. "She was our mother." Silence throbbed between the sisters. Then Nia turned to Elijah. "You will never control me again." He sneered. "You'll destroy us all." "No," she replied firmly. "You already did. I'm just cleaning up." And with that, she turned her back to him. Andre stood at the bottom of the stairs waiting beside the car. "It's done," he said. "No," Nia replied, a stormy calm in her posture. "It just started." Behind him, Elijah didn't call out, didn't move. The spell was broken. His empire, now exposed to the world, would crumble under its own rot. Simone stood at the doorway, sobbing as the house that had raised them disappeared into the flash of lights, the rumble of thunder, and the roar of betrayal made public. Nia walked into the rain, not to escape, but to rise. But even as the world finally saw the monster for who he was, Nia would still have to face the one last truth. whether she could forgive herself for what she lost and who she'd become to win. The rain fell like absolution, washing away the last remnants of her old life as Nia and Andre drove away from the estate. Behind them, the live stream still rolled, the world watching the downfall of Elijah Hayes unfold in real time. Headlines were already exploding across social media. Hayes food scandal exposed, millions affected. CEO implicated in death of whistleblower. Daughters speak out against their father. But amid the noise, Nia felt an overwhelming silence within herself. Not emptiness, but quiet, as if the storm in her soul had finally settled long enough for her to breathe. They parked near the river where the city lights shimmered along the water's surface. The bridge loomed overhead, a place where she had once run as a girl, feet pounding pavement, a world too big to understand. Now, she understood all too well. Andre leaned against the hood of the car, watching her. "You did it," he said. "You won." Nia shook her head. "No," she said. "This wasn't about winning, just about not letting him keep hurting people." She stared into the river. Its surface churned slowly, carrying away what didn't belong, as all rivers do. "And now?" Andre asked. "Now." The word echoed inside her. It was a space, a blank page, a chance. "I need to find her," Nia said. "My daughter." Andre nodded. Mrs. Dubois reached out. "She can arrange a meeting." Nia exhaled, her breath forming a cloud in the cold night. "I don't know what to expect." "Love," answered Andre, "or at least the chance for it." She smiled, a gentle, tremulous expression. "It's more than I ever thought I'd get." Her phone buzzed again with an incoming notification. It was a message. From unknown. Subject: "I'm ready to talk. Jay Morrison." Andre caught her quick intake of breath. "That's the DOJ. They must be considering charges." "It's happening," Nia said out loud. "The system is finally responding." The weight of it all settled, but instead of crushing her, it held her steady. "You're not the same person you were a week ago," Andre said, studying her face. "No," she agreed. "But for the first time, I feel like myself." Andre raised his brows. "And Simone?" Nia sighed. "She made her choices. But she's still my sister. When the dust settles, maybe there's a way forward." He nodded thoughtfully. "You don't have to forgive her, but you don't have to hate her either." Nia nodded, and that was enough. The moon peeked out from behind the clouds, casting a sudden silver shimmer across the dark water. She thought of her mother then, and the sanctuary she'd built in secret. A quiet fortress of truth. That legacy was now her compass. As they left the riverbank, Nia's phone buzzed again, this time with a number she didn't recognize but somehow felt familiar. A girl's voice came through the speaker, soft, too soft. "Hello? Is this Nia?" Her heart seized. "Yes," she said. Her voice broke on the single syllable. "Yes, it is." The voice trembled. "They told me you were looking for me." There it was, a pulse of possibility, a chance to begin again. Nia crossed the threshold from survivor to storyteller, from daughter to mother, from pawn to queen. And the truth she'd freed, the truth she'd fought for, it didn't belong to her anymore. It belonged to everyone who'd ever been silenced and everyone who had yet to find their voice. Sometimes the most powerful revolution begins not with a roar, but with a whisper finally spoken out loud.